Prodigal. We're so glad you've decided to join us today. We're in week 3 of our series, Sunday School Revisited, and I have just a few quick announcements for us. Easter Sunday is just 2 weeks away. We'll be having 2 services, one at 9:30 and one at 11, with our annual Easter egg hunt right in between. Candy donations are due today, but we'll still take it if you plan to donate. If you're newer to Prodigal or would just like more information about who we are as a church, we'd like to invite you to fill out a digital Connect card. This is one of the best ways to get involved and to be kept up to date on all things Prodigal. We're so glad you decided to join us here today for week 3 of Sunday School Revisited. Happy Sunday, church.
Okay, go.
There's Daniel is the king, and there's a girl that helps her. Daniel, and Daniel gets prays 3 times a day, and they made a law, no praying 3 times a day, and Daniel didn't know that law, so Daniel got sent into the lions den because he broke the law. And then he didn't get attacked by the lions because Jesus protected him. Yeah, Jesus sent an angel to. Then the father went to check on the brother, then took his son out of the well. I forgot what's that. And that is the story of Daniel and the lion's den.
We are in week 3 of our Sunday School Revisited sermon series, and throughout this series, we're exploring famous Bible stories that many of us have heard growing up, and then we're discovering now they're not actually children's stories. There's something about windows. Okay, not the glass, not the frame, but what a window does. A window is where inside meets outside, where what's private meets what's public, where light gets in and where people can see what you're really all about. And sometimes the thing that changes your life isn't what happens to you, it's what you keep doing with your windows open. Today, for week 3 of our Sunday School Revisited sermon series, we're going to camp out with a very familiar story, Daniel and the lion's den. The better word in Aramaic is actually pit, not den, but it doesn't quite have the same ring to it, okay? Daniel in the lion's pit sounds like Daniel in the lion's spit, okay? Which would be really weird if there was a story about a dude in the saliva of a giant jungle cat. So we're going to be studying Daniel and the lion's spit today. To start things off, we normally picture youthful Daniel hanging out with the lions, praying very calmly and solemnly. But in the real story, Daniel is now in his 80s. Did God really protect him, or did the lions not see any meat on his old bones? Okay, he's 80. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Chariots of Fire, but the runner runs for gold in the 400 meter in the Olympics. And the reporters asked him afterwards, how do you explain your success in the 400 meter? And he said it like this. He said, I run the first 200 as fast as I can. And with God's help, I run the second 200 even faster. How do you explain Daniel at this point, 80 years of age, faithful in a pit of lions? Well, he's run the first 200 as fast as he can. And now with God's help, he's running the final 200 even faster. Let's dig in. So Daniel is living in exile in Babylon, but then the Persians eventually take them over. And so now he's serving under a Persian king, a different religion, a different oppressor. And Daniel proves himself more capable than all the other administrators and officers. And because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the whole entire empire. Verse 4. Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. So they concluded, our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. Integrity and character are formed when no one's watching. See, Daniel had the opportunity to use his position of power for himself, and nobody would know. Okay, there was no video cameras back then. Part of his job was collecting taxes, and he could have easily said, 1 for Persia, 2 for me. But he never did. He never lied about his numbers. He was never corrupt. He never cheated people. He was a man of integrity and had an impeccable reputation. These guys searched and couldn't find one negative thing about Daniel. Okay, Olivia Pope from Scandal couldn't find any dirt on this guy. And so Daniel showed the characteristics of godliness in his secular job. Punctuality, attention to detail, respect for authority, honesty. They could find nothing wrong with him in these things. Okay? He's just a guy. Like he wasn't a pastor, he wasn't a missionary, he had a government job. And he did it in such a way to show his character and integrity. So, do you? How are you at your work? Are you on time? Do you work hard while you're on the clock? Are you a good example? Do you smidge numbers? Do you lie? Are you known as a person of integrity? There was no gap between his private life and his public life. Or to go back to the window metaphor, there was no gap between the outside and the inside. And it brings up a fair question. Does our private life and our public life line up? Does our inside match our outside? And this can go either way. Like privately, we're a Christian, but we want to fit in with everyone else around us, so our actions don't quite line up to being a follower of Jesus. Or publicly, we're a Christian, and we abstain from all the bad things. We vote the right way. We're at church 3 times a week. But in all actuality, our private lives are far from him. There's a big difference between what happens on the outside and what happens on the inside. Which is it for us? Or is it both? Your private life and your public life don't line up with the teachings of Jesus. Proverbs 16:2, people may be pure in their own eyes, but the Lord examines their motives. See, Daniel is surrounded by people who are not good influences. And it would be easy for someone to get caught up, to kind of get lost in a situation like this. Daniel never was. I read of a grandpa who was walking out with his grandson one day. How far do you think we are from home? He asked the grandson. The boy said, Grandpa, I don't know. The grandpa said, well, where are you? Again, the boy said, I don't know. And then the grandfather laughed and said, it sounds to me as if you were lost. And the young child looked up at his grandpa and said, I can't be lost. I'm with you. Daniel was never lost, even when surrounded by secular culture, secular kings, and temptations all around. Why? Well, because he knew God was always with him. And God is always with us. Daniel knew that God was always there. And so he never took a little bit off the top for himself. He never betrayed his boss. He worked his butt off to be the best employee he could because God was always in the room. His workroom and his bedroom. Verse 6. So the administrators and high officers went to the king and said, "Long live King Darius. We are all in agreement, we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty, issue and sign this law so it cannot be changed, an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked." So King Darius signed the law. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down, as usual, in his upstairs room, with its windows open toward Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. Then the officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for God's help. So they manipulate the king. They create a law. No one can pray to any god or human except to the king for 30 days. Okay, let's pause here. Okay, this isn't just about religion. It's about loyalty, identity, allegiance. Empires always want ultimate allegiance. They don't mind if you believe things, as long as those beliefs don't challenge their authority. Does this ring a bell for anybody? Now, here's the moment. Daniel hears about the law, and what does he do? He goes home, opens his windows, and prays, just like he always has, 3 times a day, facing Jerusalem. I find it so interesting that these advisors, these officials, these government leaders, their entire plan depended on Daniel's discipline. They knew he'd be praying to his God. They knew they could count on his consistency. 3 times a day, Daniel prayed. That word pray in Hebrew is palal. And it doesn't mean ask for stuff. It means to intervene, to align, to step into relationship. Daniel's not just saying words, he's placing himself again and again into alignment with the God of Israel. And the text says, just as he had done before. Okay, this is not rebellion, this is rhythm. This isn't defiance, it's devotion. And so he opened his window towards Jerusalem, bowed, and prayed. When I was a young pastor, the early 2000s, I worked at an older church that was trying to modernize their worship experience. A lot of churches are doing this. And so they created another worship service for adults geared towards younger people, young families. The service was at 11 a.m., so they called the service the 11. And then they brought in some of the younger pastors to help lead this service. I was a 20-something youth pastor, so I was a part of helping plan these worship gatherings. So we get all together and we try and get creative with the sermons, with certain elements throughout the service, take some risks that they weren't willing to do at the earlier services. And in one of the meetings, one of the younger pastors who was a part of leading worship for the 11 said that he had an idea. He said that the reason bowing is so powerful is because it is the only position where our heart is higher than our head. It sounds cool. It's just not true, right? Like the handstand is also a position where your heart is above your head. And so he said on Sunday during worship, I want to share this with the 11 o'clock service. And then as the band plays behind me, I want to bow down to demonstrate this posture towards Jesus. Okay, I kind of exchange glances, like side eyes, with like other pastors. And we're all thinking like, I don't think this is a good idea. And so I say something like, listen, I think the heart's amazing. I'm just not sure if it's going to land or connect like during the worship service. And so after some more discussion with other pastors and leaders, he says, well, I'll play it by ear. I'll follow the Spirit's leading. Okay, that's a good Christian phrase there. I'll follow the Spirit's leading. So Sunday rolls around and the band's leading everyone in worship, and it's a powerful moment. And then the worship leader begins to cry. And then he says it. The posture of bowing is the only position where your heart is placed above your head. And then he turns around back towards the audience and he bows down. And his heart was in the right place, but his butt wasn't. Okay, he wasn't a small man. So all the congregation can see is like this guy's butt in their face. And he has no idea because his heart is above his head. His heart was great, but his butt wasn't. It didn't land. And so Daniel kneels, bows, prays 3 times a day, even when it becomes illegal. Windows open. He doesn't hide it. He doesn't close the windows. Why? Because faith was never meant to stay secret. The inside was always supposed to be seen on the outside. In Jewish tradition, there's this idea that prayer isn't just about speaking to God. It's about orienting your life toward God. Rhythmic prayer does this. Daniel's windows face Jerusalem, the place of promise, the temple, the presence. And so even in exile, even when surrounded by evil, his life pointed somewhere else. There's an ancient Jewish saying that says, where your prayers go, your heart follows. Daniel's body is in Babylon, Persia, but his heart, his imagination, his hope, it's still anchored in God's story. And so these officials, they tricked the king into his own edict. And it was an irrevocable edict. King can't change his mind. He sealed it with his signet ring. Verse 14. Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. So King Darius, he had some undesirable qualities, but we also find in him some admirable things. The text says he was displeased with himself. Okay, instead of blaming others, he knew that it was his fault. We can be sure that he wasn't happy with Daniel's enemies, but he knew that ultimately it was his responsibility. He was the king. He signed the edict. He wasn't quick to blame others. He knew that despite these officials, he was to blame. He wasn't quick to blame others. Something we can learn here. Like, are we? Like, have you ever knocked something over on accident and you're like, who put that there? Come on. Is their fault you knocked it over. The text says that the king labored till the sun went down. He worked as long as he could. And according to the Eastern custom, the execution was always carried out on the evening of the day that the accusation was made and found valid. It goes on to say that the king refused his comforts and entertainment that night because this whole situation with Daniel. Okay, it affected him. He fasted all night. Now, I don't want to overwhelm you with my own spirituality, but I just want to let you guys know, as your pastor, I fast every night as well. Yeah, from roughly 10:30 p.m. to 7 a.m. every single night, I refrain from food and drink. Okay, your pastor fasts every single night. I'm faithful. And so this king fasts. The king discovers that there are consequences to his impulsive decisions, and he cannot undo them no matter what he tried. Have you ever been a part of that? You do something impulsive, and then there's consequences. You can't go back. You can't undo them. You ever done something and then worked feverishly to try and undo it? I picture like the scene from the great show Friends, okay, where Ross is listening to his answering machine and Rachel, in a drunken stupor, says, "I'm so over you." And Ross is listening to it, and Rachel's trying so hard to make sure he doesn't. He can't hear what she says. Now, that's from the 90s, so it's a little different. Now today, it's text messages. Like, you can't undo that. Sometimes there's that undo button, but sometimes it's just too late. I read a text this week of a mom texting with her son, and she writes, "Your great aunt just passed away, LOL." "Why is that funny?" her son responds. "It's not funny, David. What do you mean?" "Mom, LOL means laughing out loud." "Oh my goodness, I sent that to everyone. I thought it means lots of love. I have to call everyone back. Oh God." There are consequences. You say something hurtful to your spouse, can't undo that. You respond not in kind to someone, you can't take it back. Like Darius, our foolish decisions often haunt us. And often all we can do is pray and ask God to be merciful and miraculously intervene when we make our foolish decisions. And so the king here is trying so desperately to undo what he did, to no avail. We can't undo the actions of the past. We can move past them, we can repair them, we can be agents of reconciliation in spite of them. But one thing we cannot do is undo them. And so Darius says, "Your God whom you serve continually." The idea here is, listen, I tried my best to save you, Daniel, but I failed. Now it's up to your God. Let's finish the story. Verse 17, "A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with his own royal seal and the seals of his nobles, so that no one could rescue Daniel. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment. He couldn't sleep at all that night. And very early the next morning, the king got up and hurried out to the lion's den. When he got there, he called out in anguish, 'Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God whom you serve so faithfully able to rescue you from the lions?' Daniel answered, 'Long live the king. My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me, for I have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged you, your majesty.'" In the ancient Near East, lions weren't just animals. They were symbols of power, chaos, and kingship. And so to be thrown into a lion's den was to be thrown into the embodiment of death and disorder. And notice here that God doesn't protect Daniel from danger. He protects him through danger. If your number one goal in life is to be safe and comfortable and never take any risks, you may not experience the fullness of the Christ life. God sends presence into the chaos, not to remove Daniel from the den, but to meet him in it. God doesn't send a rope. He sends himself, his presence, in the wild, untamed lion's den. Now, when we heard this story growing up, all of the focus was on the lions and how God was with him when surrounded by dangerous beasts. And that's true. But that's not the point of Daniel 6. The point isn't God is with us when we're in danger. The point is God's with us. The victory in the pit wasn't in the pit. It was in his room with his window where the outside world meets the inside world. The victory wasn't won in the den. The victory was won in the room, with the window open, facing Jerusalem, and Daniel praying 3 times a day. I once heard it said that many of us tiptoe through life so as to arrive at death's door safely, but dear brothers and sisters, run, jump, skip, and dance through life. Don't tiptoe. Yeah, we take risks. One of my favorite comedies is Groundhog Day. Okay, we just had Groundhog Day. And by the way, the groundhog's a liar. Punxsutawney Phil, he said we were going to have 6 more weeks of winter, and it's been like 90 degrees this week. Okay, Groundhog Day is a make-believe story about a weatherman named Phil Connors who has a bad attitude, even worse manners, and a razor wit. He was reporting on Groundhog Day from a small town that he cared very little about. And the fuss the folks were paying to a groundhog, he didn't care about at all. But he did care for the new and attractive producer played by Andy McDowell. And after the shoot, they couldn't get out of town because of bad weather. And to his horror, when he woke up the next day, he discovered that he had woken up to yesterday. He met the same people, did the same things, they said the same things, and it ended up as this promising day, then ends on a sour note where he had to start the day all over again. And the alarm clock goes off and off and off the same day. He tried many ways to beat the system. Okay? He took advantage of what he knew from the previous day, but over and over again he woke up to a new day after a terrible mistake. And since he was going nowhere, he tried to woo the producer. And she was smitten with him because he knew what she liked, what she didn't like. He knows that because he had asked her the day before. And just as she was about ready to kiss him at the end of the day, she discovered that he was just a hypocrite, mouthing words to win her, and she slapped him. And she slapped him for many, many recurring days until he gave up trying to be who he was not. Then he began to learn new things, like playing the piano. He changed his attitude to just enjoy the town and the people, even the weather that left him there. And when that happened, the producer fell in love with the new Phil Connors. The weather cleared up, and it was a new day. He stopped pretending to be something he wasn't, and he started to actually become the person he was pretending to be. I think a message here in Daniel chapter 6 is don't pretend, become. Don't spend your life pretending to be a deeply passionate follower of Jesus. Become that. Become the dad you want to be, you dream to be, you want to be, you long to be. Become the person, the coworker, the sister, the brother, the friend, the mother. Become the one you sometimes are pretending to be. No matter where you are at this place, in this moment, don't pretend, become. So what is this story about? Daniel in the lion's den. It's about faithfulness in exile, integrity among systems of power that are oppressive, rhythms that sustain you. For some of you, that's what you need to hear. Rhythms that sustain you. Find that. And it's about a God who is present everywhere, even in the lion's pit. Daniel doesn't survive because he's lucky. He survives because his life is rooted, formed, shaped in a room with a window open. Psalm 18 says, "To the faithful you show yourself faithful. To those with integrity you show integrity." Integrity and a pursuit of God in the midst of the fire. Daniel didn't start praying when the law passed. He'd been praying long before. And so when the pressure came, he didn't have to decide who he was. He already knew. Picture this. Daniel kneeling, windows open, light coming in. Outside, people are plotting. Inside, a man is realigning. Maybe the question isn't, will you survive the lions? Maybe the question is, will you live with your windows open? Because a life with open windows is a life that cannot be controlled by fear. I'd like to close our time together with a closing prayer. And if you see it on the screens and you're watching online, would you pray it out loud with me as well? God of Daniel, meet us in our rhythms, our routines, our quiet moments. Give us courage to open the windows, to align our lives with you, to trust your presence, even in the den. Amen. I want to thank you so much for joining us online at Prodigal Church Fresno. If you are in the Central Valley these next couple weeks, we have an outdoor service for Palm Sunday next week. It's going to be incredible as we anticipate celebrating the resurrection together on Easter Sunday, April 5th at 9 and 10:30 in Boulder High School's Performing Arts Theater. It's going to be incredible. He is risen.